Hey, ladies and gentlemen, boys and berries, welcome to Synergy Cafe. And I've got a special guest on today, and she's hiding in the green room, and we're going to go find her in a little bit. But here we are in Minneapolis, Minnesota, the World Nerve Center and headquarters at my home office here in friendly Minnesota. Her name is Kristin, and I think the last name is pronounced Derus Dore. So I'm going to go find out for sure she's enjoying some of our digital hors d'oeuvres in the green room, and I will go get her. I'll be right back, okay? There she is. How are you today?
I am great, and thank you so much for the amazing green room catering here. It's so good. Just stuffing myself.
Local. Very local, the digital hors d'oeuvres.
Delicious.
Where are you headquartered here? Where are you in the world?
Well, currently I'm just outside of Minneapolis in Eden Prairie, Minnesota, and I'm going to be relocating a little more centrally at the end of the summer.
Okay. Do you know where yet?
The Golden Valley 394 area.
I know where that is. I used to live on Winnetka kind of area in Golden Valley.
Yeah, it's off Winnetka, so you're right.
That's a good area because it's kind of centrally located. Get on a freeway, boom, wherever you want to. Good
Precisely. Spot. It's really good for my clients and also convenient for me.
Yeah. So for those that don't know, this is the scoop. It's all about biofeedback. So you got Eden biofeedback, but because you didn't use Eden Prairie, you're still able to manipulate.
Precisely. Yeah. I mean, when you think, so biofeedback is for stress reduction and pain management, and Eden just kind of conveys that whether or not I'm located in Eden Prairie.
Like the Garden of Eden kind of thing?
Precisely.
Exactly. Yeah, I had some of that biofeedback stuff that was, because I had a TIA a while back.
Yep.
And the guy went in there, he had a brain therapy thing and put a little dealie on my head. And I just sat and watched Tom Hanks movies. Mm-hmm. And the thing was set up so that if the right things weren't connected in my brain, it would either get soft and quiet or the picture would fade. And then I would focus on it. All of a sudden it would get bigger again. So it's training the brain. That's kind of what you're doing, right? The feedback part.
Yeah, it is. And my process works a little bit differently because there's a lot under the biofeedback umbrella, but you're absolutely right. It retrains the brain and it kind of resets the way your nervous system identifies and processes stress. So I work a lot with like mood type of stuff, as well as it's also FDA approved for pain reduction or pain management. So I also work with people with chronic pain.
Got it. And you also do some work with pets, I see.
I do. I have a small practice with animals as well, and that's been very successful because my process doesn't rely on verbal communication. So if an animal has endured something traumatic, or even one of the animals I was working with for a while was a cat, he had an infection that made it unpleasant to use the litter box. So his solution was to never use the litter box again.
Oh,
well, that's not ideal. And biofeedback was able to reset the stress or the trauma around that for him. So he was housebroken again. And he recently passed away, but he had a long, full life after that.
Yeah, I'm going through some of that stuff at age 67. There's some, I've been doing magic kind of all my life as far as magical entertainment. So my brain is wired that way. I oftentimes look behind the story I tell is I take my wife to a Cirque du Soleil show and she's watching all the performers. And I'm watching behind the scenes with all the rigging and the guys with the black hoodies on, hooking things up. I'm always looking behind the scenes on things. So I'm going through some stuff right now where I'm wanting to rework my, what are those called? Neural pathways?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you got this thing hooked up like this, and it should be hooked up like this.
Yes.
And you kind of rework that. So that's what your feedback. Can you kind of predict what you want to have happen for it to reprogram that way? Or is it simpler than that?
Well, people typically come in with a goal, whether it's just managing stress or dealing with a specific condition. So we do try to tailor things to work on that. But a lot of the programs or the things that actually happen that are run are picked by your unconscious mind.
Right.
And so sometimes you have benefits that you weren't even expecting, that weren't quite your goal. And it's funny that you mentioned the Cirque thing, because I don't know if you can see, I guess it's back there somewhere. That's actually an aerial silk rig. So in my abundant free time, I'm also an aerialist. So I would be watching the performers. Yeah, that's what's back there behind the curtain, such as it is.
Well, very cool. See, I'd be watching behind the curtain, and my wife would watch you do your talent.
Exactly. But yeah, people have all different experiences with the stress reduction. I had one client come in for a session. She is in the process of a divorce. She also has her own business. She recently published her first book. Lots of stress, lots of things to manage. And we did a session. She felt much better. But a few days later, she also told me her thumb had unfrozen. Apparently, many years before, her thumb got kind of locked, those joints.
Sure.
And we didn't do any work specifically on that in the session, but something had released within her that then moved that as well. So people have a whole host of kind of unintended or bonus.
Yeah, it's a holistic kind of thing. Like if you go in because you want to be a better public speaker, because you want to speak in front of a crowd without getting nervous, all of a sudden it's going to change your relationships at church, at the gym, and friendships and all that kind of stuff, because it is a holistic thing. But the idea behind it, because I talk with some people about these things like microdosing and things like that, and psychedelics and things of rewiring, and everybody else talks about the PTSD trauma kind of thing. Yep. Sometimes trauma is a teeny tiny little thing, but it could be like as a child. Well, I'll tell a quick story that I tell a lot of people. I had an abandonment issue. When people would leave me in a group, I just felt kind of weird. It wasn't traumatic or anything, but I went and did breathwork sessions where we kind of figure all that stuff out. What is going on? I came out of the breathwork session craving chocolate so bad. I stop at the store and I see this big 6-pack of Nut Goody candy bars. I'm getting them all. And I ate 4 of them on the way home. The next session, it turned out that when my mom and dad were, when I was a little kid, they were alcoholic parents. So they would go out to the club, leaving me at home. So that isn't a big deal. Mom and dad going out again on a Friday night. That's what happens. But to a little kid, you hear a little sound. That might be a very traumatic thing to a little child. And something like this, what happened with that was I was able to address that. Both my parents were are deceased. So I went out to the cemetery and talked with God and my mom and dad, and we came to an understanding that I forgive. So it's all healed up, and now I don't have the issue anymore. So it's something like what you're talking about with the biofeedback, that somebody might have a simple little thing like they got bit by a snake, or they got barked at by a dog and scared them. And it might not have been a vicious dog. It was just a dog barked and startled them. And that could escalate into age 40, 50, 60 years old. What you're talking about, you can go in there and figure out what is that and kind of rewire it so that you can be at peace now.
Well, exactly. And I think, you had kind of an ongoing, repeating sort of abandonment thing happen. Mm-hmm. And that's very common with people. The other thing that I seem to see a lot is almost, I think of it as like micro stresses or micro triggers, things that are stressful, they're inconvenient, they're challenging, but it isn't big enough for us to celebrate. Like if I said, I recently lost someone close to me, you would have sympathy. We could talk about it. You would commiserate, and I would get support around that. And I could, my stress would be validated. But if I say, gee, Brad, I like to be at 0 emails and there's 10 in my inbox I can't deal with, that might be really stressful to me, but that isn't the sort of thing where anyone like supports or helps you through it. And it can be paralyzing though, those micro stresses throughout the day. Or, if you're a parent and the daycare center is calling, you see your phone, you're like, oh no, what could it be, right? Your body has an immediate stress response. There's all sorts of micro triggers. And with biofeedback, we can kind of reset so you're more balanced. So then the same stuff happens, but your body and your mind responds to it better, because it can be big things, or like you said, maybe nothing terrible happened on any of those nights when your parents were away, but it still had a big impact.
And it's a subconscious thing that somebody might not know that they have any issue. They're just dealing with it. Like stress is a good example. I had that a TIA situation. Yep. And I didn't know that I was stressed out because I was working my way through it. Yeah. So sometimes there can be that little subtle thing that they need you really need to talk with somebody else because your subconscious is defending you.
Yes.
And you might not even know that it's there. So you need to have talk. And like I say sometimes, like I'm having a conversation with myself and I'm giving myself bad advice, and it keeps me in that loop of bad advice. Why am I not being able to break through this issue? I need to talk to somebody else that goes, have you thought about this?
Well, and sometimes you're right. You get into bad advice, you get into bad loops, or you get into habits. And even pain can become a habit. If we do it enough, your body gets used to it. And I think it's interesting with the stress piece, how you said you were just kind of working through, you're powering through. I mean, in our culture, that's really celebrated and rewarded. But sometimes, too much stress is just too much stress, or you should give yourself more grace, time to relax. You're a business owner, you're a successful magician, you've got all this, you have family, you have all this stuff going on, and it weighs on you. It builds up over time. And, we have the expression of like, no pressure, no diamonds, but not everybody needs to be a diamond,
And your body's going to eventually fight back and say, you know what? I've had enough. It's time for you to be done with this.
Exactly.
That stress thing, I never realized how important that is because you don't notice it. You work your way through it, and then all of a sudden it sneaks up on you.
Well, and research at the Mayo Clinic has found up to 90% of disease is caused by stress. 90%.
It makes sense. You suppress it, you kind of combat it.
Yeah.
Like this is sort of an off topic, but I remember a guy that was a truck driver, and he had to go to the chiropractor because he had back problems. Couldn't figure out why it was, and they found out that it was just that his wallet. He was sitting on his wallet, so his hips were a little goofy.
Yeah.
So it could be something as subtle as that, and you really can't detect it until you get in and talk with somebody else that asks the right question. And so your biofeedback situation, what is the wiring? How do they hook you up? What do you do? You pinch it on your ear?
No, it's not ear related. So for people, there's wrist and ankle bands, and kind of like what you described, one that goes across your forehead. Okay. So unlike some of the other things, there's no like messy gels or anything, and you would recline comfortable minutes during the session, and any things that have been stressful now or in the past can come up as places your body identifies to work, in addition to us working on whatever your goals are.
Okay. It sounds a lot less invasive because I had to put on this thing and he had to dig in there with some little goo and stuff and get all the things on there. And I took a picture of myself. I don't have it anymore, but it's kind of funny looking.
Yeah. There's different technologies. So this one, it's less invasive. It's really clean. And then for the animals, there's a pad that they would lay on for the session. And so like a cat might come in a carrier and we could slide it underneath them. And for a dog, typically they'd find somewhere comfortable they wanted to lay during the session, and we just have them lay on top of it. They can look out the window, watch cars go by, whatever's comfortable for them.
Do you do verbal things with them, with animals as well?
Somewhat, but most of it is again, the nonverbal. Most of it is just figuring out what has been stressful to them. And it was really interesting. One cat, we were able to kind of get more information about past stress and trauma. And it was all about loss. And eventually the owner got more information to discover that when that cat had been a baby in its litter, like they got, I forget the name of the disease, but the mom and the other cats all had some type of a disease and all died. And that was like the surviving cat, but she would have been around her dead family for a bit until someone found this only living kitten. But the trauma of that was still hanging around for her, as you'd expect. Sure. But without animals being able to have a voice, it can be tricky. And so it kind of can give them a voice, or we can get a better idea of where their stress is and help them reset it so they can just live better lives.
Well, I think it's important to, like you get in that loop, it's a habit, and it's good to sometimes like pivot it a little bit. Yeah. More different, kind of like the trajectory of a rocket. It doesn't take much to just pivot a little bit, but once you get out there, it makes a drastic change, out in the distance, further on in your life.
Well, yeah, absolutely. And like with this, if you get, typically the software will give you a percentage of improvement at the end, and we're hoping for 50 to 80. But if you get like a 50% improvement in your stress level and you manage that, that can have a profound impact on your overall health. And most people would come in once and then typically 4 to 6 weeks later for a follow-up, and then maybe quarterly. So it isn't something that you do a lot. And those, everything else, they usually say will just be easier in your life. You might have less pain, you have less stress. If you do have something challenging, some of my clients describe it as like tuning the static out of their brain so they can, just think more clearly.
That makes sense. Kind of like dialing in a radio. Remember the old kind of
Yes.
radios where you didn't have it digital? It was kind of like,
exactly. And then maybe move the antenna a little bit too. Where's this one? Oh, I'm gonna use this twist tie to hook the antenna onto something over here. Now it works great.
Exactly. We used to do that. The tin foil and the coat hangers and all that kind of stuff. I get it, but you don't have to do that because you got a much simpler system.
Exactly. Yeah, there's no coat hangers involved.
Do you work with people, specific types of people, or is it anybody that has any kind of thing? Like, are you into sports, or are you into maybe entertainment because you're a aerialist?
Well, I think like a lot of businesses, I've developed some silos because whatever people experience as a benefit, that's what they tell other people about. So I work with a lot of people who have like mood related type stress symptoms, like who might feel depressed or down sometimes, who might feel anxious or nervous. That causes trouble sleeping. So I work with a lot of people with insomnia. I don't have really an age range. I've worked with children, who are struggling in school. I've worked with, I think my oldest client was in her 80s. And so, there really isn't an age range on that. So besides like mood stuff and insomnia, I also do work with pain and arthritis, things like that. And just garden variety, anybody with stress or with things that don't seem to be improving, because I'm not a doctor. I don't diagnose or treat anything. But if the Mayo Clinic finds up to 90% of disease is caused or made worse by stress, if we can get your stress level under control, the treatments the doctor's giving you, for example, are probably going to be a lot more effective. Many of my clients have found that if something isn't quite working, this might be able to manage the stress they're feeling to bring their body back into balance. So then your self-healing is enhanced.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people don't realize how holistic and how connected everything is. And it can be subtle. Like people have that issue in the back of their neck for some reason. And it's all because they're running the mouse on their computer.
Mm-hmm.
All day long, and you can real like that thumb issue you'd mentioned.
Yeah,
something like that would just disappear because of something else that was reconnected. It's pretty fascinating, the whole concept of the brain, and the brain being the plasticity of it, how it's always changing and redoing stuff. It's also interesting how it can get stuck in a rut, and like with my entertainment, I've been in the event business kind of like all my life, and it's been very hard for me to get out of it. I'm looking to shift into some other stuff. It's still kind of event related, but it's hard to get out of that. And I bet something like this could work for that too, where if someone is wanting, you're going with the intention of, I want to get out of this rut, this habit that I'm in, you know, start reprogramming. You'd maybe get some feedback from that, and even change. You could change careers.
That is not uncommon. I've actually had several of my clients end up switching careers or starting businesses, and they have credited the biofeedback for it because they don't feel like scared or nervous, or they're able to do better planning without that brain static we talked about. I've had a couple clients actually propose and get married too. And so it can help you maybe just reset, the fears, the traumas, whatever's holding you back. So, I mean, that's one thing I love about this too, is just to see without that like weight of the stress on you, what you would do, if you weren't, so concerned about it.
Again, it could be something very, very simple and subtle. Like maybe, your boss is one of those bosses at work that likes to give you a little jab, like, 2 minutes late again. And it's like every time I come in a little bit, even if I'm there on time, I'm almost late. And this boss keeps on, and that might be enough where all of a sudden you realize that, oh my God, this is not the career I want to be in. And now you go and I'm working for an art department and I just love it here. I'm enjoying my life now, and I'm not stressed anymore. My back no longer hurts.
Yeah, exactly. Or I've had, one of my clients, he's a very successful barber, but he had been working at a barber shop for years for someone else, even though he didn't love it, right? He didn't love the atmosphere. And it was fantastic. He did some sessions and he went out on his own, like in an individual salon suite somewhere. And now he sets his own hours. He doesn't have that negativity. He's been doing it for years and he's making way more money. But he didn't have like the confidence, or some fear or trauma was holding him back. And he just needed that resetting. And another one of my clients is in the trades and he did the same thing. He's wanted to start his own business for years. And now he's doing that successfully, living with so much more joy. I mean, I'm mentioning a lot of male clients, but I have an equal number of female clients. You know, it goes both ways.
Well, I can imagine that just all it take is like one connection, and it could change the rest of the connections. So that's, well, we're at about 20 minutes, and I like to keep these consumable and sort of short. But on your website, is there any kind of like place that you could direct them to? Or do you do like a complimentary session to find out if you're a good match or not? Or is there a way?
Yeah, I always welcome, anybody can give me a call anytime and we'll talk through what their goals are. I'll explain more about this and we can kind of see if it makes sense. And I try to be really affordable, and flexible on my scheduling. I don't want to add stress to reducing your stress.
That's right. Oh, this is perfect. How much is it going to cost? Oh, it's $17,000.
Yeah, and it's cash only, or one of your kids, or, oh yeah, but I do stress reduction, but only during these hours at a really inconvenient location, and you have to jump through hoops to do it. Try to make it easy.
Well, that's my challenge with travel and stuff. It gets to be so much work. Yeah. I don't want to go. It's too much work.
Well, I know a fantastic travel advisor, so I can take the stress out of travel too.
Perfect. See, there you're well-rounded.
I got everybody.
Well, Kristin, I'm going to put you into the green room for some more digital hors d'oeuvres, and we have a virtual assistant back there that swapped it all out. It's all new stuff. And if you want to stick around, we can have some more conversation after the show here.
Brilliant. Thank you so much.
I appreciate you taking the time. Thank you very much. There you have it. Our friend Kristin Derus Dore. And here's her website so you can find out how to get a hold of her. It's pretty simple to remember. EdenBioFeedback.com. 3 words, easy breezy. And here's a little bit more. That's what it looks like right there. Holistic wellness backed by science. And that's the story of Morning Glory. So I'm going to sign this one off. Enjoy the rest of your day. Be good, be kind, be nice. That's Energy Cafe. Be good. Did I say be good? Be good. Be nice.